My guest today is Mark Andrus, the Chief Information Officer of the National Geospatial-Intelligence Agency. Mark, welcome to the program.
Thanks, Jason. It's great to be here.
Now, I've had the NGA CIO on before, but you are new to NGA, so to speak. You've been there just about a year. So I'm going to start at the beginning, where maybe a little bit about your background and try to understand. You came over from the Navy, and I think you mentioned April will be your year anniversary. Talk about that decision to come from the Navy to the NGA, and what kind of move was that for you? How much learning curve?
Well, it was quite a bit, but I had a great experience in the Navy. I would argue that, my heart of hearts, I'm a sailor, having served in the Navy, and I spent 20 years working with the Navy. The last several, about 9, were in the Pentagon, and I got to be a part of something very exciting. It was a time in which the Navy was bringing together all of its information-centric disciplines, so cyber colliding with intel, with networks and IT, and even things like meteorology and oceanography. Information-centric disciplines were being brought together for a value proposition, and it was just a great time to be there. But like anything, after 9 years, it's time for something new. So NGA came knocking, and it presented a really neat opportunity.
Did you have some experience in the Navy with geospatial type of information? I mean, GIS is everywhere, but it's a lot different when you just touch it a little bit versus, hey, this is what I do for a living in many regards.
Absolutely. So one thing I like to tell people about NGA in particular, a lot of people associate NGA and its title Geospatial-Intelligence Agency with one of its core missions, which it's extremely good at, and that is being a premier imagery exploitation, providing decision advantage, the classic eye in the sky or airborne asset, that type of intelligence. But NGA has a second part of its mission that is vastly important, and that has to do with its history. And NGA's history is about a consolidation of several agencies associated with mapping. So, and it makes sense, right? Geospatial. But if you think of NGA, think of cartographers, hydrographers, geodetic scientists, all of them with a set mission of really mapping the Earth to provide great precision and an accuracy and to enable everything else that goes on.
All right, so let's talk about that mission in a little bit, because so much of the technology that you do and that you provide through your office will make that mission side go. One of the things that we're in the middle of, and I think we're seeing this across a lot of agencies, not just NGA, is really this technology mission integration transformation. So let's talk a little bit about that. How are you leading that effort to really bring the NGA into the 25th century or wherever we're going next, right?
Yeah. So Vice Admiral Sharp is the new director at NGA, and he arrived a couple months before me, and he's described this particular moment in NGA's history in 2 terms. He talks about it in terms of evolutionary and revolutionary. So evolutionary involves what you think of with a normal IT system where we are at a point where we've got new sensors coming out and we need to adapt to those new sensors, modern technologies in terms of resolution, in terms of phenomenology and all that. And that underpins a core technology that's been around for a long time that needs to evolve. And then apply on top of that the revolutionary aspects of geospatial intelligence. And by that I mean, think about your iPhone or your Android or whatever your mobile device is. Think about the sensor technology improvement that's happening with every release of that. And apply that on a global scale. Apply that to airborne assets. Apply that to our space-based assets. And you see this step increase, not evolution, but a revolution in what that enables, both in terms of precision, but also what it enables in terms of volume on a global scale. So that's one aspect of the revolution. The second aspect of the revolution really gets at the software enhancements that are coming to enable us to address those volumetric challenges that we're talking about. So this is where that conversation leads you to automation, it leads you to this machine learning discussion, it leads you to AI. And so that's one of the other things that drew me to NGA was at this particular moment, there is such a huge opportunity to look at where technology can lead you in addressing those particular challenges.
And in many ways, and you probably have seen this through your time with the Navy and other places, the technology is part of that mission in such a bigger way than ever before. And I think the people who do the mission, the people who do the business side are realizing that in a much different way than before, where if you think about how we talked about in the mid-2000s, well, technology is an enabler, right? It just enables the mission. Now, no, if you don't have your technology, you can't do the mission in many regards. Are you seeing that change as part of that, this revolutionary and evolutionary discussion?
I'm seeing two things. One, yes, the technology is absolutely becoming much more of an enabler. A lot of those principles, however, from the early 2000s, they haven't gone away. Right? Like service orientation, the idea of breaking your technology into blocks of services, decoupling old systems, that was, you were probably interviewing somebody on that in 2005, right? Those principles, they don't go away. They get amplified and enhanced with a lot of technology, for sure. But they definitely don't go away.
The other piece I think that we should hit upon as we talk about this mission and transformation and how technology fits in is how the mission area not just are looking to technology to help them, but really you guys are walking down a path together versus you're always coming in from the side roads. Walk me through a little bit about how the technology, the mission, and your role as CIO all fits together to march down that path.
No, that's a great point, and I think it's one that we often overlook. That the technology is fun and it's exciting. But if you don't do all those other things that you're talking about, Jason, it really doesn't come together. So I'll tell you, we talk a little bit about the technologies and how they're being implemented today, but some of those organizational changes are other things that I've stepped into that NGA took on. Let me give you one of our examples. So we talk about secure development operations, right? This idea of more rapidly doing stuff, this idea of user-centered design. But are you creating an environment where you're bringing the user together with the actual builder? And so at NGA, what we've done is we've created integrated program offices where we got a commitment from our director of analysis, our director of source, which is, think of that as collections. They've committed their people to be part of an integrated team. So my builders sit right next to the user to enable that. So that's a huge piece that a lot of organizations fail to realize. If you don't bring them together, don't expect the outcome to really represent that end user. A couple of other areas that I'm very excited about, which is kind of anticipatory of our future architecture. We made a decision to begin calling out certain types of people at NGA that we needed to recruit more of. And one of those examples is called the data core. Right? We talk about data science and those types of things. Well, NGA made a decision to go call out a group that is dedicated 100%, almost your ninjas of data science, and they augment every aspect of NGA. They bring data science tool development on unique problems so that we can attack those, and then I can learn from that and bring that back into my enterprise architecture changes.
All right, very cool. I think we'll get into the data side in a little bit. But before we do that, let me start the conversation around cloud. Because one of the things as we talk about your future architecture, as you talk about enabling mission, there has to be that basic infrastructure, the starting point to make sure we can get you can get the mission areas the tools that they need. So let's talk about cloud and where you guys are at with the move to the cloud.
Great. So NGA, in my view, again, I've only been there 10 months, but I'm very pleased with what I've seen in terms of cloud adoption. There was a lot of hype coming in 2015, a lot of cloud-first policies. A lot of those resulted in a few good things and a few stumbles. I think NGA moved in very aggressively, and they've learned a lot. So one of the things that I've noticed that's been very valuable is the stepping back and learning from cloud adoption. So we've now started to do a lot more with cloud analytics. What is working in the cloud in terms of cost? What is working in the cloud in terms of latency for a particular data set, a particular data type? And we're applying that and building out a few things that are what I think are really helping our project managers, such as a cloud analytics toolkit. So they come in and they say, hey, I'd really like to do X, Y, or Z. And we say, well, let's look at the mission load, let's look at the data formats, and let's say, hey, this is better served right here in our data center, or it's optimized in the cloud. So one, I think there's been a lot of learning. The other area that I think NGA has been leading is this idea of computing at the edge. How do you marry up and leverage the benefit of the hyperscale compute with our need, often unique need, of getting that information out to the hills of Afghanistan to support an operation, to a mobile device, to support a humanitarian assistance or disaster relief. NGA has done a lot of great work in leading forward on how to address some of those challenges, and it's been pretty impressive.
Sounds to me like when you talk about cloud analytics tool, the first thing I think of is, it's some kind of big data thing, but it's really what you're saying is it's an assessment in the sense of, hey, you want to move this to the cloud? Okay, let's fill out these boxes and say, how much is it going to cost you? Do you have times when you ramp up and ramp down? Are you pretty flat? It's almost like you're asking your mission area to answer a questionnaire before, and then you can decide which path, again, cloud, on-prem, hybrid is best.
That's exactly it. It starts with the mission question, because I think when I talked about that rush to the cloud, a lot of people went there with an anticipation immediately of lower cost, and that's just not always the case. Mm-hmm. Right? You get great agility, you get great resiliency, you get great flexibility, but that flexibility can lead to unconstrained usage that mission owners need to understand what the pros and cons of that are before they make that move. And that's been a lot of the analytic work we've been doing to better posture us how to optimize cloud, not just rush to it.
First, we're going to take a quick break. My guest today is Mark Andrus, the Chief Information Officer of the National Geospatial-Intelligence Agency. I'm Jason Miller, and you're listening to Ask the CIO, sponsored by Equinix on Federal News Network.